How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it with our latest edition of Mets Free Agent Frenzy live show. Now, my last live show, or one of the last live shows I did, I highlighted it as the latest Mets news and rumors show. It's basically the same thing, but I want to emphasize more the Free Agent Frenzy aspect, only because the latest rumors regarding the New York Metropolitans had them in connection to two of the bigger name free agents out there in the market. Whether they land them or not has yet to be seen. There's plenty of reason as to why neither could land in Queens, or why at least one could land in Queens, that being in Blake Snell and Jorge Soler. So we're going to get into all the latest on Jorge Soler, Blake Snell. We're going to start today's conversation with the international free agent signing period officially beginning today, as the Mets made 20 selections signing 16, 17-year-olds with the hopes of them being the next big thing in Queens, the way that a most recent international free agent signing in Francisco Alvarez has now become over this past year and will continue to for the years going forward. We'll get into those signings, the latest on Blake Snell, Jorge Soler, JD Martinez, Justin Turner, any other starting pitching target, and their mother, especially evaluating the trade market, as David Stearns is still heavily active on that front reportedly, along with the bullpen, as the Mets are expected to add to said pen, hopefully in the coming days or in the next week or so. What relievers could that be? What relievers have they missed out on? And so much more is what we'll be deep diving in tonight's live show. So everyone first chiming in live on our replay, greatly appreciate you guys. Yes, let's clear the air on one thing. I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. They are literally going to lose in 45 seconds on the clock right now to the Buffalo Bills. Congratulations to Bills fans. I'm a Steelers fan, but I'm far from, going to be losing sleep over this, only because the Steelers have been a team that I, unfortunately, since really going back to the Ben era, have just struggled to be committed to on a week-by-week basis because they've had a lot of their flaws. TJ Watt being out with injury certainly doesn't help. I know the Bills had a lot of key defensive injuries in this game too. Again, all in all, I like that the Steelers showed some fight, but Miles Jack kind of single-handedly gave the Bills further incentive to score more and ultimately win. So again, congratulations to Bills fans. They're going to be moving on. I'm a Steelers fan. I'm perfectly fine. I'm just ready for the Mets, and I'm a Rangers fan for hockey too. So we got plenty of good things happening on that front. Apologies to anyone that I just offended by making note of my favorite teams and they are not in line with yours. I understand that can be a frustration to someone that is maybe a fan of me, but is also a diehard Islander fan or a diehard Bills fan or a diehard Eagles fan or something. I don't know. Either way, enough of the playoff talk. That's all I'm going to share on that for now. But I also want to share a couple things. And, something that I really haven't gotten the chance to do that I should have my last live show is really just, congratulating the life that was for Buddy Harrelson. Buddy, of course, was a longtime New York Met, a part of the OG regime with the Mets when they were first coming about. Unfortunately, passed away over the past couple of days now. And in my last live show, I didn't really get a chance to give a proper moment of silence or, little tidbits on my input or anything of that nature. So again, my condolences to the entire Harrelson family. It's beyond unfortunate to see him pass. Of course, he lived a long, eventful, and exciting life, and certainly had a lot of amazing moments here as an amazing New York Metropolitan. But again, my thoughts and prayers are with him and his entire family during this time of grief. And also, shout out to the man himself and Mr. Martin Luther King. Shout out to everyone. Of course, Martin Luther King Day, very exciting day as part of this country too. And yeah, that's really all the latest, I believe. That's separate from the Mets now. We're 4 minutes into this thing. I got to talk about the New York Metropolitans. So let's do exactly that. Again, I appreciate Schracken for chiming in. I hate both options. Soler, rather have Turner, Beatty. Okay. Appreciate your comment. Love you too, Mama Warren. Happy to have you in here. Earlier today, look at the face. Does it look like it does look like Pudge's son a little bit. That's a good point. Also, one little tidbit, guys, as we get into the international free agent signings, I misspoke just slightly when discussing the Mets' top sign today, and Giovanni Rodriguez. In my video that came out earlier, he is 17 years of age, not 16. I got them confused. I had them flip-flopped. So my mistake on that one. Anyone that checked out that video already and was wondering, Wardy, is that for certain his age, or did you have it off? I did have it off, so just want to address that there. We weren't going to yeah, I knew we weren't going far playoffs-wise for the Steelers. Without TJ Watt, one is the biggest killer when you have literally the best defender in the game right now. Defensive player of the year, no doubt. And he's out with injury to this magnitude where he can't even play if you try to shoot him up with whatever you need to shoot him up with, because that's what they do in the NFL. Regardless, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I did not expect the Steelers to even make playoffs this year, so that was a pleasant surprise when that ultimately happened. And Mason Rudolph just said, you know what, I'm going to decide to be a number one quarterback for you guys, literally out of nowhere. Dave, how you doing? Kevin Kish Charles, John, all great members here on the channel. People watching live on a replay, happy to have you all in as we're about to break down the latest in Mets land, headlined by the Blake Snell, Jorge Soler rumors. I'm going to just say one thing first and foremost regarding Blake Snell in particular. We're going to deep dive a bit more about him, but just so you know, to anyone that thinks that the Mets would sign Blake Snell on a short-term contract, short-term, I got a bridge to sell you. It's not happening. And the reason why it's not happening is Blake Snell has a qualifying offer attached to him, folks. What does that mean, you might ask? What it means is the Mets will be penalized. They're going to be hurt in their draft selection. They're going to lose international free agent spending money. Why would they do that on a short-term deal for a 31-year-old southpaw Blake Snell for a team that isn't even going all in the way that they plan to go all in 2025 here in 2024? For more reasons than one, that makes little sense, as does the rumor itself, but we'll address it further here in tonight's show and explain the pros and cons more about Blake Snell, why it could be feasible for the Mets, why they would make this move, including the money coming off the books after this season and after the 2025 in conclusion. But still, we'll get into plenty more on Blake Snell, but just want to clear the air on that. There isn't a chance in hell that the Mets sign him to a short-term deal, and I'll stand by that until proven otherwise. But I do want to start tonight's conversation by getting into the international free agent signings. And make sure to smash that like and subscribe on your first chime in. Greatly appreciate. Shout out to BetUS for being a great sponsor on the channel as always. But this is the reality. These Mets made 20 signings today for the international free agent signing period. So for those that don't know, around every January, teams that have been scouting, young kids, we're talking 14, 15, 16, 17 years of age in DR, Puerto Rico, wherever, they've been scouting them for the past year. Plus, there's been long rumors that these teams would sign these players once they hit the signing period, which of course began today. Now the signing period has officially began. Some of these guys we already knew about for the most part, most of them actually. But the reality still is that the Mets landed one of the top prospects out there right now in the international signing period, to the point that the guy that the Mets signed, hilariously enough, is a fellow Venezuelan catcher, just like when the Mets signed a 16, 17-year-old Francisco Alvarez from Venezuela. They have done the same now in Giovanni Rodriguez, the number 6 ranked prospect in these prospect rankings per Baseball America, number 7 per MLB Pipeline, was given the 5th highest signing bonus among all players available in this international free agent class of prospects, and is making $150,000 more than what Francisco Alvarez received in November of 2018. That's absolutely crazy. And to give you an idea of how talented this guy is, we did a thorough breakdown of him and his game earlier on the channel, but to brief it real quickly, you're getting a guy that is deemed as a potential steal, even as the selection that the Mets acquired him at. Of course, we saw the Atlanta Braves assign a player to a $5 million signing bonus, so they're very excited about that. We saw the Padres land the top international free agent prospect for another consecutive year, rather. They are the team famously known for having Ethan Salas. Salas is already, I think in Double-A, when the kid's, 17? Like, it's ridiculous what's happening. Those are rare things. They do not happen often. But the signing the Mets did here and landing Giovanni Rodriguez is really important because he's automatically one of the Mets' top one of the Mets' top prospects as a whole. He is a plus defender at this age, which is so rare. Francisco Alvarez, when the Mets signed him, was anything but a plus defender, had a lot to work on with his defensive game. We're already getting someone who has ridiculous pop time, quickness, arm strength, going home to second base to get those runners out. We're looking at solid vision, soft hands for the catching, and a plus bat with high contact with more power to grow into as he gets older. Again, when you're looking for everything when it comes to tools in a player evaluating the catching position, that's what Giovanni Rodriguez has. And to the people out there that are saying, great, the Mets just acquired a catcher, as if that makes sense. The same way that the other signings the Mets did, at least the next signing after that, the 26th ranked prospect or so they acquired, is a shortstop. Those things mean so little when you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years of age. Why? It's because most of these kids break out by starting great at a premier position where it is highly desirable at the major league level. It's shortstop and catcher. A lot of these guys ultimately end up going to the hot corner, second base, left field, first base, DH. The positions change greatly that you'll see over time. So even if the Mets say have a logjam down the road, they can get creative with Giovanni Rodriguez to see if he's the best of the bunch, or if they want to put him in, say, the corner outfield, if they want to put him at DH. Again, something to worry about down the road, not right now. And to have someone this good of a defender and a high contact bat as a 17-year-old catcher is nothing short of impressive. So that was a big factor into why the Mets made the acquisition to acquire him. Again, they acquired a total of 4 players in the top 50 of the international free agent signing period here, this pool. And outside the top 100, they signed one of the sexiest, the flashiest, the biggest names available thanks to his family heritage. And that, of course, is, yes, Vladdy Miguel Guerrero, the son of Vladimir Guerrero Sr. and the half-brother of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who currently plays with the Toronto Blue Jays. You're looking at a true slugging first baseman / corner outfield from the left side of the plate. Hopefully a guy that down the line, maybe as soon as his 19, 20-year age seasons, again, wishful thinking, but still could be someone that if he profiles and projects well and develops great with his family tree around him, could be a power bat for the Mets down the line in the middle of this lineup. The key holes that he has in his game is the lack of defensive ability. Where is he going to profile best? First base, DH. He's a really big guy at the young age of 16, 17 right now, so there's a lot of uncertainty with him. But the plus power, the ability, the bat speed is all there with Vladdy Miguel Guerrero. But to show you the drastic differences and where these prospects currently rank and their overall tools, how polished they are, again, Vladdy Miguel Guerrero is on a $100,000 signing bonus. We expanded on him more and shared highlight video in our recent video on him earlier today. Check it out after watching this one in case you guys haven't already. But Vladdy is not by any means a top international prospect. Does not mean he can't amount to have success, because there are players every single year that are outside the top 100 international free agent signing class, their rankings, that sign with teams and ultimately have great success at the major league level down the road. It's not uncommon, but is definitely something to make a note of versus the $2.85 million signing bonus that Giovanni Rodriguez received for the Mets in this same signing period. So again, one guy is very, very polished and has so many attributes to his game where Giovanni very well could be at the major league level by time he is at the young age of 19, 20, versus someone like Vladdy Miguel Guerrero needs his power to drive him there, work on opposite field, work on that defense, but ultimately that power is what will carry him throughout however long his professional career may be. Whether that just stays in the minor leagues, whether that becomes an absolute great in a Mets uniform, that power will be his biggest driver versus someone like Giovanni Rodriguez has plenty more power to tap into in his young career, but is great on getting at base at a strong clip thanks to his high contact ability. So there's a little bit more there that those that didn't know too much about the international free agent signings. Again, there's more to them as well. I'll actually pull up right now. Give me 1 second. The Mets, I think, did tweet themselves today a list. I don't know if it incorporates all 20 signings the Mets did. Of course, most people don't know a lot of these guys unless you really follow heavily in the international free agent, prospect pool. Again, very select people do that. So to everyone who does, I commend them greatly for that. It's certainly an interesting one. Okay, here are all the signings here we see for the Mets. Okay, it is the following. Giovanni Rodriguez, Edward Lentwinga, who is a top 40 prospect, outfielder. Leandy Mella, infielder, Dominican. He's Dominican. Edward is Dominican. Of course, Giovanni is Venezuelan. From the Bahamas, we have Bohan Adderley, infielder, outfielder. Dominican, Yenzi Rivas, who plays a shortstop position, if I'm not mistaken. Vladdy Miguel Guerrero, as we just described, outfielder, infielder from Dominican Republic. Same birthdays. The year 2006 literally gives me like chills. That's like freaky. Like, you're telling me the same year that the Mets had themselves a nice run that unfortunately, don't get me started on that breaking ball, fell short, but still, it's crazy seeing how talented these guys are at such young ages. Luis Montero, left-hand pitcher out of the DR. Max Gregory Harvey, right-hand pitcher out of the DR. Angel De La Rosa, left-hand pitcher DR. Levy Rodriguez, right-hand pitcher DR. Anthony Delgado, outfielder, born in 2007, my goodness, DR. Fidel Pinango, infielder, outfielder. Venezuela, Fidel Pinango. Oh, was that who I just said? Okay, never mind. Anthony Delgado, we like that last name, outfielder, DR. Johan Sanchez, outfielder, Venezuela. Yasmir Reyes, catcher, Venezuela. Liner Ramirez, infielder, Colombia. Rocky Solano, outfielder, Dominican Republic. Sterling Fernandez, infielder, DR. Roybert Herrera, infielder, outfielder, Venezuela. Diover Diaza, I like that name a lot. Diover Diaza, that's a sick name. DR. Franklin Candelario, outfielder, DR. And Starling Fernandez, I said that already, infielder, DR. That's all the latest pickups for the Mets in regards to that. Raimel Ortiz, yeah, I don't think the Mets are going to sign Raimel Ortiz. We'll see, but Raimel Ortiz was the second or third biggest signing that was in their top 40 that the Mets were initially signing. However, doesn't appear to be the case. Something fell through. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but we'll see. Thank you, Grant. I try my best. Rocky Solano is a dope name, too. Also, guys, shout out to Jenny Mets on Twitter, the biggest Mets fan base type account out there. Highly implore you all to follow him. He comes out with awesome little reports, his own little content on a daily basis, trying to keep you guys updated the way we do here on YouTube. He is the king of doing there on X. So make sure to check out my man Jenny, and appreciate you chiming in. 1,200 with $5 donation says, our starting rotation still sucks. Viva los Zapaki. Appreciate the donation. If you know, you know. You crack me up with that. You really do. We should hire Vladdy Sr. as a co-hitting coach. Maybe down the line when his son is actually ready to hit the major league level. Until then, there's no need to bother. We'll just see how Barnes and Chavez handle this season. But, after reading the name Starling Fernandez, who is one of the prospects the Mets signed today, that just reminded me of another Starling who's doing pretty well, who's Dominican, and that is none other than Starling Marte. Remember him? Yeah. Starling Marte, guys, is batting right around 300 or close to in the Dominican Winter League right now. He's getting on base at a very respectable clip. He's stealing bases. He's hustling down the line, and he isn't showing any signs of pain. When interviewed recently, Starling Marte explained that he is pain-free finally after having a grizzled, truly a battle all 2023 after coming back from hip surgery, never fully recovered and had to get ramped up to the point where he couldn't even play for Team DR there in the World Baseball Classic because he just wasn't ready to go, was looking rough in spring training, looked rough throughout the entire year, somehow still stole the Mets like 24, 25 bags last season. I have no clue how Marte did that because I feel like the guy barely played at all. Either way, Marte finally looks healthy. Let's pray to whatever God you're praying for. To me, I know what God's I'm praying for, of course, that they can please get this man healthy throughout the majority of the 2024 season, be healthy heading into camp, along with Jeff McNeil, of course, and these guys can hopefully have nice bounce-back seasons for the team in Queens. I'm not banking on it, but I surely am hoping it. Certainly the case here for Starling Marte. Marte very well can be a guy that gets reps at DH, but my biggest criticism of Marte getting reps at DH, he doesn't have the power to back it. Marte at his absolute best as a 20 home run hitter, absolute best. Because could he pop into power more as he gets older? Maybe gains a couple pounds, loses a little bit on the legs. It's possible, but again, that's not what Marte has ever been known for. And the last thing I want is another guy that maybe will be very hit or miss in that position, where you're not even getting consistent power to back it. If you're going to be swing and miss at a decent clip, then by God, at least be a lock for 25, 30 home runs. But Marte, in DH, you're still probably looking at absolute best 15 bombs, which isn't the worst thing, but certainly can be better. But I understand the appeal to have him in the DH position every now and then to really try to help him have longevity throughout the 162. For that reason, I understand more. But aside from that, not so much. Apologies, everybody. I was just pulling up something right now to make sure I have all my info in front of me. But guys, so another big takeaway that I want to talk about tonight in particular that has really stood out to me about Starling Marte is the fact that he looks like he's having fun as well. I know that might not seem like a big deal, but Marte, from everything that I've heard, even while talking with, Mark and James, so I'm sure I have plenty of stories that they'll be able to tell you guys with the Mets Stuff podcast. Now that they're not longer physically with the Mets, they're just their own entity the same way that I am. But I'll never forget, asking about Marte and kind of like how players go about themselves, from what they've seen. And Marte's a very introverted guy in comparison to other players in that clubhouse. To what degree, I honestly don't know, and I don't want to misspeak considering I'm not there. I'm just relaying what I have heard from people that I trust who have been around the players on a day-to-day basis, which was certainly the case in them. And to hear that in the past was a little surprising to me. And, Marte, especially if health is back on his side, we could finally see a Starling Marte that's not only performing at a solid clip again, health-wise, but also happy in doing so. The guy just got married over the past month, too. This is the same Starling Marte that tragically lost his ex-wife a number of years ago, because I'm not sure exactly how she passed, but I know she tragically passed. And, Marte has, of course, found love again. I'm very happy for him that he's found that. But you have to wonder how much of the mental aspect maybe came into play when Marte, too, was on a nice, comfortable contract where, you know what, my hip's bad. I'm really not going to overdo it right now. I don't feel great to begin with. I'm getting this guaranteed money. Why hustle my ass off when I'm not even 100%? Now that Starling is feeling 100%, he's married, he's a new man a bit. I like the idea of Starling Marte being at least a contributing player here in 2024, even if it is not to the degree that it was in 2022. Just someone that can be formidable, someone that is worthy of at least somewhat of the money he's making this season is really what I'm looking for in someone like him. So if he does anything beyond that, whether it becomes, he's going to steal 30, 40 bags this season, hit for a solid clip, get on base at a solid clip, go a little bit more opposite field, maybe tap in a bit more power and at the sacrifice of some contact. If that all happens, great. But, he's going to kind of need to surprise me a little bit. Free agent fizzle. Guy, I'm not going to lie. That's pretty hilarious. That's a good one. That really is. Yoshima, it's okay, my friend. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. I'm old. I saw Vladdy Sr. play against the Mets in Montreal. Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy. Montreal Expos. Bring him back, I say. Bring him back. I actually don't bring him back. There's enough issues with players having a lack of interest to want to go to Toronto every year in the free agent market. Last thing they need is another team in Canada. It'll be great for the surrounding area, but can't say much beyond that. That's just my humble opinion, because there's a reason why there are a lot of people that are reluctant to go to Canada, either because of their policy differences or because of the weather or whatever it may be. There just always seems to be a decent amount of hiccups with people in evaluating there. That's why a lot of the guys that we've seen in my lifetime, at least, have had great success in Toronto, either signed there as a minor league player and blow up onto the scene and really became something more. Think of Jose Bautista, for example, or they were someone that was acquired via trade and is embracing being there, most recently like a Chris Bassett. I don't know why I'm really getting on this Toronto tangent right now, but that just went in hand because of course, us talking about Mr. Vladdy Sr. during his time in Montreal playing in Canada. Got it. Gotcha. So we talk about the international signings now, guys. I want to get into quite a bit on a guy who has been connected to Toronto and the Blue Jays, and that is none other than Jorge Soler. Jorge Soler, by a show of hands, how many of you guys would like Jorge Soler in a New York Metropolitan uniform for the 2024 season? Give me a big old wave right there. If you don't want him, give me a big old thumbs down in the chat. People on replay, same applies. Drop them down below. It is greatly appreciated. Jorge Soler has been connected to the New York Mets. This goes back over the past week or so when Robert Murray and his, the Baseball Insiders YouTube channel discussed in a recent live stream that when talking the latest on Soler, and this goes back to a week or so now, that the Boston Red Sox have shown interest, that multiple teams have shown interest. The Blue Jays have been involved. The Mets have shown interest as well. Since then, and since making my video on Jorge Soler, I'm sorry, it feels like the floodgates have opened with Soler since the video. Not that I was one to break news or anything, but because a lot of people didn't see the clip that Robert Murray had, who, for those who don't know, Robert Murray is a very good up-and-coming MLB insider. He has been for a number of years now, younger. And I say up-and-coming because he hasn't been as seasoned of a vet as a Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal, but he's done great diligent work over the past number of years, and I respect him quite a bit. And once I made that video up, we really started to circle, and everyone was talking about Jorge Soler that entire day. It was becoming more active on social media. And then we find out, a mere 24 hours or so, not even, that according to Hector Gomez, who again reports out of DR, that the Boston Red Sox, while they have been involved plenty, the Mets have heavy interest. The Blue Jays have heavy interest. We've heard some reports saying that the Red Sox aren't the front runner anymore. There are people saying that the Red Sox are the front runner. There are people saying that Toronto's front runner. There are people saying that, the Mets absolutely are a great fit. But Soler, if he wants to guarantee 3 years, it's hard to envision it. There's a lot of contradicting reporting going on in regards to Jorge Soler, like everything else in this damn offseason. But one thing that has held true is that there's been this continued linkage between the Mets and these big bats. And for David Stearns, who said it himself that, we wouldn't mind a bat, but it's not necessarily a priority to the same thing as the bullpen, or even adding to the rotation still to either sign or trade for another starter, in my opinion, and the opinions of many, it's still very important for the Mets to finally have a consistent DH where you know what you're getting out of basically on a day-to-day basis. As much as I like Mark Vientos and truly believe that if he's given an open leash to be an everyday DH, he may thrive, I like the idea of having more certainty there first. If you're asking for me, if you're asking for my humble opinion, mainly because this is a Jorge Soler that's coming off of a tremendous 36 home run season. We know that he's very, very hit or miss at times with his health. But Soler on, say, a 2-year deal, if the Mets could get him maybe 2 years with a 3rd-year option, something along those lines, you're automatically getting 2 lock when healthy, 40-plus bomb bats, and Jorge Soler and Pete Alonso back-to-back in this lap. If you go short-term, you get JD Martinez, even 25, 30 home runs with a very high OPS, great slugging. Even if the numbers dip down a bit on a 1 or 2 year deal, you're still getting one of the best power hitters in the game today, that being in JD Martinez, that we've discussed greatly on the channel already. If you want to go for more so not just power, but positional diversity and his ability, then you go with Justin Turner. Justin Turner can play the hot corner. He can play second base. He can play first base. Can he play these positions great? No, but he can at least be serviceable there if need be to get creative based on matchups and also with inevitable injuries that happen every season. Again, you're looking at another high contact bat, around 800 OPS, 20 bombs, north of 90 RBIs season. You're probably looking at with someone like Justin Turner who gets on base at a solid clip. Not great, but again, very serviceable. But having said that all, Jorge Soler, if you're going to go out and acquire a bat, if you're going to go above and beyond the presumed roughly $10 million to work with range, if you're Andy Martino, if you're willing to go above those things, Jorge Soler is the type of bat that reminds me eerily similar of Kyle Schwarber when he signed with the Phillies, in the sense that, yes, you might not get the biggest high contact here. Yes, you're going to have swing and miss, but you're automatically adding power like never before to set a lineup along with Alonso. That's where the never before part comes in. Not in the never before part in the sense of just power in general. We've seen that endlessly with Pete Alonso. But just think how much better Pete Alonso could be in his walk year, no less. You want to talk about added incentive, not just the walk year, but if you have a power bet behind him, think about the amount of protection that helps with him. He's going to see more pitches that he usually doesn't see. Pete Alonso hits more bombs that are outside the strike zone than most in Major League Baseball. Since arriving in Major League Baseball, he has seen pitches out of the zone that he has hit for at least doubles, if not home runs, more than any other guy in the game. Outside of, say, like an Aaron Judge, who of course always has to take very low pitches because of how massive his strike zone is. Point here again is that the ability to add said guaranteed power outside of Alonso, Lindor, and Alvarez could not only do wonders for this offense immediately, but it could do wonders to the point where that could be a significant factor in you making or breaking playoffs this year. That could be a factor in you potentially being buying or selling at the trade deadline. The same can be said with JD Martinez and Justin Turner, but Slayer at the young age of 31, the ability to be put in the corner every now and then, even though he is absolutely horrendous, and I will stand by that. I do not want to see him playing in the outfield, but if he has to, it being at a minimum level, that's something the Mets can work with. Maybe that's enough positional diversity for them. Maybe the Soler Mets connection is complete bullshit. I don't think it's complete BS, only because we've heard from multiple reporters now that the Mets have had a level of interest. But to what degree? You know what I mean? I think Stearns is showing interest in a lot of guys. I think Cohen is showing interest in a lot of guys. But they have that hard line to say as to how far they are willing to go. And until we kind of know for certain, we're all left here with said uncertainty. And for me, if you're asking for my opinion, I think I'd be getting my hopes up if I came out and said the Mets are going to sign Jorge Soler. I obviously hope they sign Jorge Soler. I hope they sign JD Martinez. I hope they sign Justin Turner. I wouldn't mind any of those three. But the idea of rolling into the season with just DJ Stewart, just Mark Vientos, there's potential there. There's absolutely potential there. But I think given how lackluster, how underwhelming this offseason has been, even when it's been expected, it only adds insult to injury if we get to that point. And I think there's a little bit of a fine line in itself between wanting to see what you have in young talent versus finally getting power protection that you haven't had since the DH position became universal. Now, one thing I would like to make note of, and this is something that goes in hand with our discussion a little bit earlier in the show, there is a great possibility that the Mets maybe don't go out of their way for a DH in the end because of not only just financially the contractual term, but also the lack of ability to interchange who you have in said position. I know us Mets fans, including myself, probably want the Mets to have a guy where we know more often than not he is your DH. We like the ability to not have this constant freaking open door of everyone and their mother and their sister and their brother and their father going in said position where you don't know what you're getting on an everyday basis. And it kind of throws off other people too because you're just mixing up everyone and around like crazy. Having said all that, I think it's also important to recognize and acknowledge that with Starling Marte's health, with the young studs in the Mark Vientos and the Beatty, I shouldn't say studs, but the young guns, these are guys that you want to see what you have, and you want to give them as many opportunities as possible until A, you get their trade value up, either by having them ball out in AAA or ball out the major league level, or two, you just want to make sure you have enough positional flexibility there. That way, when injuries inevitably do happen, you can get creative and push one of your outfielders to, say, the DH position like a Starling Marte, and that way maybe you want to have some games where you roll out Brandon Nimmo, Harrison Bader, Tyrone Taylor. Maybe you want to have other games where say, hey, you know what? I'm going to put this guy there instead. I want Mark Vientos at DH, and I want someone else here. You get creative. So from the creativity aspect, I can understand where the Mets are coming from. But beyond that, I'm left with a lot of head scratching and frustration, and the Mets do not land one of these bats, truly. And I really hope it's Soler, because unlike even Kyle Schwarber, Soler is a far better contact hitter. He gets on base at a great clip. He has a tremendous eye at the plate. Jorge Soler's walk rate is kind of baffling. His strikeout rate is really damn impressive for a true slugger. It's not common to kind of have the plate approach that Soler does at this point in his career after winning a championship too, playoff MVP. You know, normally some guys, they lose a little bit of incentive there, but no, Soler's game has continued to get better. Yes, he has 50 bombs on his resume, but that's going back to the 2019 era. Even in clean a lot, Pete has proven he can do that without the juice baseballs, but that was a big juice baseball scene then. We all know that too. Eugenio Suarez was in that race back then in 2019. Point here is this. Jorge Soler has tools. He's young. He fits both the short and long term by committing a multi-year deal to him. And if we're just expecting this year to be a team where you're competing for playoffs, and 2025, you want to get back to that World Series aspiration, you're just a year away. Soler fits the bill. He absolutely can impact you greatly this season and next season. So for all those reasons and then some, while I don't think it's a great likelihood, and I think a JD Martinez or Justin Turner makes a more feasible sense for the club, I think the Mets may have an uphill battle even going there with the guy's lack of interest in maybe coming here, knowing that the Mets aren't all in when these are grizzled vets. Soler at least already has a championship and a playoff MVP at the young age of 31, 32, whatever he is now, to the point that you can warrant saying, hey, we know that your biggest priority is a contract, but we're going to help you not only with a contract, but also how we want to implement you in this new era of New York Mets baseball. That could be something that's very appealing to him. He could just say, F it, the Boston Red Sox, the monster to the left, the short outfield and right. I like it. Sign me up. I'm raking in Boston. Maybe he wants to go to Toronto because he loves hitting in domes. He's had success there with Miami. Why would it be much different in Toronto? And that deeper lineup, just think about the type of offense that they would have and he would help produce. Him and Vladdy Guerrero would be so much fun together. But you know what would also be a lot of fun? Pete Alonso and Jorge Soler going back-to-back in this damn lineup. I think that's something a lot of people love the prospect of. And for that and then some, I really hope that the Mets put forth a solid, a strong, a continued effort here. Because if they don't, it's going to be disappointing for someone like me and for many fans here as well. Because this is not a Mets offense right now that you can look at, even if a lot of things go right with Alvarez and consistency with Beatty and things of that nature. This is still a team that needs the health of Marte and McNeil and the power that is currently missing in the DH position. Will it be DJ Stewart or Mark Vientos? Will it be Jorge Soler? Your guess is as good as mine right now, but by God, I hope we find out an answer sooner rather than later and it not just be one of those things that drags out terribly. But Soler is 31, I think. Correct. Yep, right around there. Yeah, he could be our DH for a good period of time as well. It wouldn't. He could be such a productive DH that where he could get to Nelly Cruz level and age. But the issue again is by having a guy that fits the DH role best. While I like guys that are in the DH role better than anything else, the concern is that they lack positional flexibility. So Soler, while he can play the corner, even though it's horrendous, at least that's something, versus you're getting other guys here where they can't even do that. And that's where it becomes a little bit of a problem for David Stearns, that, again, maybe he wants to get creative with his positional options. And they're completely limited because you have a guy that can't defend anywhere and just stuck at DH. I can understand, if you're David Stearns, why that might not be the most appealing thing. Again, personally, after witnessing this Mets team the past couple of years without universal DH, without utilizing the universal DH properly, I would love to see them finally do that. But with our luck, this very well could be the year where maybe they stay in the house to start, at least, knowing that this is the type of playoff contention year, trying to push for playoffs, but this is not the World Series trying to push for World Series type year, right? There's a real possibility that we head into this season with DJ, with Vientos, then maybe they address things by the deadline after having another failed segment of a season with the lack of a DH position being utilized properly. We'll see what happens, but I really hope it's Soler. But from there, guys, I want to talk about Blake Snell. I want to talk about the trade market. I want to talk about some relievers and why the Mets did not sign Brent Suter in particular. But before I do all that, got to let you guys hear from today's video sponsor.
BetUS, America's favorite sports book, where you can bet on everything anytime. Sportsbook, casino, horse racing, live betting, and more. We have the best bonuses in the industry. That's right, get a 125% sign-up bonus. And to celebrate our 30-year anniversary, we are giving up to 30 risk-free bets, a truck, Super Bowl tickets, and more. Don't miss out. Play smart. Join now. BetUS, where the game begins.
Shout out once more to BetUS for being a great sponsor on the channel, guys. Make sure you check them out today by clicking the link in said description. That way you too get a 125% boost with your first deposit. So if you drop 100, you automatically get 225 to work with. Is that easy? If you guys just took the Bills on their matchup against the Steelers, either on the money line or the over-unders, congratulations to you. I'm a Steelers fan, so of course I'm a little heartbroken right now. It is what it is. But if you're still trying to get in on not only NFL playoff action, maybe NHL in-season, NBA in-season action, as much as that Knicks ending to the Magic game, as heartbreaking as is, if you want to get in on that action, or maybe you just want to wait until MLB season rolls around the corner, which is going to be very soon, where we're doing unique WardyNYM parlays, where we're going to be doing, 2-3 pick parlays on your favorite Mets games that we'll talk about pregame and break down whether we won or lost postgame. If you want to get in on all that, what are you waiting for? Check out BetUS today, and shout out them once more for being a great sponsor on the channel. I did it again. I did. I apologize, guys. The intro vid. I forgot once more. Again, if we get a day where I remember to turn off the intro vid after switching the slide, it's going to be a good day because we're not there yet. Goomba with the $5 donation, though, says Marte needs a big year because Mets won't exercise his option. He's basically a free agent playing for a contract. That's a good thing for us. Sign Pete Alonso. Agreed. And sign Pete Alonso. Indeed, my friend. We all want to see the polar bear in Queens for hopefully the entirety of his career. But unfortunately for us Mets fans, it looks like there's a great chance the Mets are going to head into the season with Pete Alonso in a contract year. And then we're going to just have to kind of be hopeful this is a Brandon Nimmo situation where, even though that he is represented, you did call it Dax, that's hilarious. Even though he is represented by, yes, Scott Boras, which is the case with Nimmo, it doesn't mean he won't decide to stay long-term here in Queens. It won't be the easiest thing, but I think that's the route we're going at this rate with Pete Alonso. I hope the Mets prove me wrong, though, and ink him to a long-term extension right before the season began. But it seems like there's no extension talks going on. There was rumblings that extension talks had begun back when Billy Upper was still GM, but those were kind of refuted a little bit, even from Billy himself. And then Billy, of course, was kicked the can, and now he's been under investigation by MLB for doing whatever every single GM, President Baseball Operations, does. That's by having a guy on the Phantom IL, where he's really not as hurt to the magnitude that he is, but you put him on the IL for roster manipulation. Every single team in Major League Baseball does it, but apparently the Mets did to a higher magnitude, or at least to the magnitude of MLB's care, because thanks to a little whistleblower, I don't know, maybe it was a Buck Showalter, I don't know who it was, someone whistle blew and let that become public right when Billy Epler and David Stearns were supposed to be working together this offseason. So it is what it is on that front as well. I wouldn't mind trading for Bieber. Matthew, I can understand why you wouldn't mind, but I'm going to tell you why the Mets mind and why it's not going to happen. And I think you know the answer to this already, but say it with me. 1 year left. Rental. If you're a starting pitcher that's going to cost you more than outside of like top 20 prospects and you're a rental, the Mets are not going to acquire you until earliest, maybe the MLB trade deadline. Isn't going to happen during the offseason. Shane Bieber's not happening. Corbin Burns is not happening because the Mets not having a guaranteed long-term linkage to said players is a problem while giving up key assets of said farm, which is finally starting to get deep to a point where you're getting a comfortability level, not only after this international free agent signing period, but ultimately after this year's upcoming draft. Before that, however, you're not in a position, right now, this is a Mets team that, again, can part ways with some prospects that they deem worthy when trading for a starter that we'll get into shortly that we talked about a lot lately. But for a rental, it's just not going to happen, especially knowing that this is not a year where the Mets are going all in the way that they intend to next season on paper. So that's why it's not going to happen. I understand he's cheap in salary, and he's not cheap in trade value, though. That's the thing. Shane Bieber is not cheap in trade value. If he was, he would have gone dealt to the Cincinnati Reds months ago already. There's a reason why there's been a big holdup. The trade value for a lot of these starters is really at an absolute peak, in hand with how inflated the free agent market is for starting pitching. Everyone is costing an arm and a leg, and that is now transferring over to the trade market as such. Speaking of pitching, guys, let's talk about Blake Snell. By a show of hands, watching live on a replay, do you want to see Blake Snell in a Mets uniform? Again, by a raise of hands, let me see in the live chat. Blake Snell, you will be a New York Met. Give me a hi, give me a no, or give me a I don't know. Let me know in the chat. People on replay down below, same applies. Now, where did the Blake Snell rumors stem from? Well, they stem from Mike Rodriguez, who is a Dominican reporter of MLB. Tweeted a couple days ago while I was en route to a Rangers loss in D.C. against the Capitals just for them to win the next day. Of course, they're back home at Madison Square Garden. It should have been at that game, not the D.C. one. I digress. We move on. We found out that not only the Boston Red Sox, but yes, the New York Mets have shown a level of interest in Blake Snell. They have been in recent contact. Now, unless you are signing Blake Snell to truly a 5-year deal, 6-year deal, 7-year deal, which I don't want him at 7. 5 I could live with. You're not signing him short term, because why in God's name would a Mets team that's been so adamant about keeping prospect capital and all these things now wants to hurt their draft stock and hurt their international spending money on a short-term basis for Snell, which makes absolutely zero fucking sense. Anyone that suggests otherwise literally has no clue what they're talking about. I'm sorry. That's that's the most out of touch viewpoint on Snell. You're not going short-term for him. That does not make sense for what you're trying to do right now. It just doesn't. Even with all the money coming off the books, because the Mets have a lot of money coming off the books after this season and then ultimately after 2025, even though that they're going to make a shit ton of signings before we get to the 2025 season. Having said all that, they're not going to be in a position where they want to do that. At least we have not been led to believe that. If the Mets go out and sign Blake Snell to a short-term contract, I'll be as shocked as the next person. And it just further proves that there's so much contradiction that goes into an MLB offseason, and you could be led to sway and believe one way, and that could be the polar opposite the other way. We've went through that a lot as fans. So again, nothing's impossible, I guess you could say, with this Mets team, but I just find it so hard to believe. So for that reason, do not bet on it being a short-term option. No. Jordan Montgomery, I wouldn't mind whatsoever, but it's like Monty's market still seems pretty inflated. Blake Snell's apparently asking for like $240 million. Who the fuck's giving him that? I'm not. Are you? Is Steve Cohen? Is David Stearns? I doubt it, right? Again, these are things I doubt for obvious reasons, because we've been led to believe a polar opposite thought process. If the Mets did inside Yamamoto, they weren't going to be going all out for any other starter in the free agent market. They may do that in the trade market now that we're seeing, because the Mets are still very active in the trade market. And I'll go even further lengths to say that unless we find out reports that prove otherwise, which has been the case plenty this offseason. So anytime that we hear contradicting reporting where it holds true, I then, of course, explain that to you all and say, okay, this is why my thought process has changed, because this is what's changed. This is the reality of the situation, right? What has made sense is the thought process of trading for a controllable starter. What doesn't make sense is to sign already a 31-year-old Blake Snell on even a long-term deal, 7 years. It doesn't make sense. Short-term, because he has a QO attached, doesn't make sense. I think the sweet spot would be if you could sign him to a 3, 4, 5-year deal. That's the sweet spot. If you're going to sign Blake Snell, that is the range where I would want to see it happen. Anything less, it makes far little sense. Anything more, you're not loving how it's going to age, especially when we look at Blake Snell. I'm not even going to pull up the numbers because you know it. Had just over a 2-year rate this past season. The walk rate's been through the roof. This guy is consistently a 4, 5, 6 walk per 9 pitcher. He walks everyone and their mother. And I know that his game is so unique that the walks do not hurt him nearly to the magnitude of others, but it also causes very uninspiring baseball at times. You know, those 12 Ks might be great, but they're backed by like 5 fucking walks. Pardon my French with the F-bombs today. Wardy's unhinged tonight. I don't know what's happening. Might as well call me Patrick. If you know, you know. Bridging the Gap podcast, new episode out this Thursday. Make sure to check it out. This is not a Mets team, in my opinion, that is in the position to warrant acquiring a Blake Snell type. There's a lot of reasons as to why I'm against it. There are reasons as to why I'm in favor of it, headlined by the fact that even though that, yes, he can be frustrating as all hell to watch in many of his games, he can also be purely dominant. He can give you starts where you're like, oh my God, Blake Snell, you're amazing. You know, like, be everything. You are the love of my life. I get that too. But it's just so hard to grasp. I really think until we find out conflicting reports that this is not a nothing burger, but not much that needs to be deep dived into it. Now, if it becomes that way, great. Then we'll have that further discussion. But I got my concerns. And it's crazy to say this, even with a guy who literally just won the Cy Young this year. He just won the Cy Young in 2023, right? He's a 2-time Cy Young Award winner. To win it in both the AL and the NL with the Tampa Bay Rays, getting screwed over by Cash in the World Series sucks. And then with the Padres, it's a very impressive thing. And he deserves a lot of credit. Had 230 plus Ks this past season. Again, the dog was doing great. 11 K per 9, but that walk rate, it leaves quite a bit to be desired. So Blake Snell, as nasty as he is, if you can find him on a 3, 4, 5-year deal, sign me up. Anything less, I don't see why it makes sense, why the Mets would just be so willing to hurt their draft stock this way out of nowhere, and they're spending for international free agency. And then beyond that, it's like, okay, this is definitely a contract we're going to eat if we're going beyond 5 years, because it's hard to fathom him being consistent and impactful to that degree for that long. Especially when you look at how Snell pitches, he doesn't pitch like someone that's going to age well. We're talking a Blake Snell that's going to give you 5 innings of 12 Ks and 5 walks. You know what I mean? Like, he might not give up a lot of runs, but he works that walk count, that walk rate so fast. He works that pitch count unbelievably fast. Like, again, he'll have a scoreless inning, but it wasn't because of a lack of effort. He had to throw like 25 pitches. You know? It's an interesting one, but that's where I stand with him. I much rather the Mets continue the route in which they've been long connected with to trade for a young, controllable starter. There's been rumblings on with the Miami Marlins, but just rumblings. There has been no reported connection between the Mets and Jesus Luzardo or Edward Cabrera, just to name a few. It's all been speculation, just connecting the dots, and it went in hand with both myself and Jim at Ball Cap Sports. We both came out with a video, like, over the past week or two. 2 weeks, I think, at least. Jesus Luzardo would be a nice fit for the Mets. And since then, it's really picked up steam. It seems like everyone else since then has talked about Jesus Luzardo. So there's good reason for it, again, because he's a guy in the trade market that makes a lot of sense. Can you just get him at a right price where it makes sense for both teams as an in-division trade with basically a fellow rival? Not an easy thing to do. Dylan Cease's trade value continues to be high. The price continues to be high versus the reality is not really the same thing. So for all we know, the White Sox could be as idiotic as they are and maybe roll into the season with Dylan Cease. The Mets have shown reported interest there. Mitch Keller, a couple years left of control. The young stud with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Got a flame-throwing arm, got some nasty breaking pitches. Plenty to like there if you are a fan of the Mets and wants to see Mitch Keller on our side and not against us, breaking Starling Marte's hand again. Or we can go on to a couple guys from Seattle not named Luis Castillo, because Castillo, of course, that age, that contract, I just don't really see the fit there with the Mets, personally. But if they could get one of the younger stars there, easier said than done. I mean, we would all love a Logan Gilbert, a George Kirby, or if you happen to go to a Bryce Miller type of woo, any of those would be dope. But of course, those are going to cost an arm and a leg, which is why I could see it not happening. There aren't too many proper trade fits out there, but there are certainly a couple in this division that the Mets know very well. So I am very curious to see how down the road, if at all, they may go for something like that. Get Monty. I like Jordan Montgomery. Do not get me wrong. I wouldn't be opposed if the Mets got Monty. But what is his market shaking out to be? That's the real question with Jordan Montgomery. And right now, it's not shaking out to be something that is appealing for the Mets. Have you, if you guys haven't been paying attention, pardon me, I'm very all over the place today. That Steelers game threw me off quite a bit. If you guys have been paying attention, then you know that this free agent market depth-wise just is not there. It is unbelievably top-heavy. And then you get onto the trade market. You see some very nice, sexy, flashy names. 25, 26, 27-year-olds with 2, 3, 4, 5 years of control, right? We're looking at young, controllable, high upside stars. Freddie Peralta, who we would absolutely love from the Milwaukee Brewers. Again, easier said than done to acquire someone like him as well, because you know the Brewers are going to ask for a king's ransom. Rightfully so. Multiple years of control, very favorable contract, and has been a stud for the Brewers coming back from injury. So when you look at the market as a whole for the starting pitching, yes, there's a world where we could still see the Mets roll into said season with Sean Manaea being their last addition. But David Stearns, when responding in the recent presser with both Bader and Severino, made it abundantly clear how much it seems he wants to add more pitching. He's like, you know, we're still very active. You know, you can never have enough, pretty much. He made it pretty clear that, you know, whether they'll be able to land something or not is yet to be seen, but it ain't going to be for a lack of effort. David Stearns wants to add this rotation, and because he wants to add is exactly why I'd imagine that should the Mets do it, it's going to be for a number 3 starter at absolute worst in this rotation. At absolute best, ace caliber, absolute worst, you're number 3. So that's kind of the latest there. The Blake Snell updates. The Red Sox have shown interest. We know the Angels have been involved in that market. There's been multiple teams. The Yanks, of course, have been involved in that market. The Yanks are not going to acquire him now after landing Stroman. I just do not foresee a world where that to be the case. They offered 150 over 5. He said no. They pivot to Stroman at 2 years, 37, 38 million. So that's where we're at in regards to that. So yeah, I that's probably my biggest takeaway with the pitching market right now is the Mets are reportedly involved. I wouldn't buy into it too much at the moment, but they are reportedly involved, and it's something that we will soon hopefully find out a resolution to in the coming days over the next week. Now, we're kind of in this purgatory. We're getting closer and closer to this MLB free agency purgatory in the offseason, where we're at a point where there could be extensive stretches where there's little to no moves, and then bam, a domino falls, and there's like 4 or 5 moves in a row. That's where we're at right now. There's like 160 or so, if not more, free agents currently available in the market, and it's January 15th. We're at like unprecedented territory with this stuff. So for that and then some, this could drag out quite a bit, but I'm truly hoping that sooner rather than later, we get more clarity on the rotation and if it's going to stay stagnant as is, or if it's going to actually get another upgrade before the season begins, either via trade or via something else. Wardy, if we trade Alonso, says Dre, what would be an acceptable package would be? Again, if you actually trade Pete Alonso, you have to ask for a Kane's ransom. I can't sit here and give you a proper, respectable package. What I can tell you is that the Mets are not trading Pete Alonso before the season starts. If Alonso is dealt this year, it'll obviously happen around the trade deadline. Wouldn't expect sooner, wouldn't expect later. Around the deadline would be him at his peak value, as long as he's healthy and everything. But that's all wishful thinking for the fans that want Alonso traded, because I don't. I do not foresee him to be dealt. I think Pete Alonso, if he is not a New York Met next season, is because he decided to go elsewhere in the free agent market versus the Mets trading him in advance and burning that bridge before they really had a chance to really consider bringing him back for the ensuing offseason and then beyond. So that's where I'll leave you in regards to Pete Alonso. I really don't like to acknowledge that because there really hasn't been much factuality behind said rumors. It's just been a lot of hearsay, a lot of fluff so far on that front. So we're going to round out the show by spending the final like 4 or 5 minutes here discussing the relief market, okay? And there has been really too many more updates in regards to the relief pitching market. We know the Mets have reportedly been connected to 3 of the following relievers. John Brebbia, right-hander, most recently with the San Francisco Giants, who had an 11 K per 9 as a starter, as a spot starter, so to pitch an inning or two to begin a game, or to be a reliever, which is what he was for the Giants. Or we have Wandy Peralta, southpaw reliever who can be utilized in various ways, who again strikes out guys at a good clip, but has some nasty off-speed pitches, saw to life on the velo. That is Wandy Peralta, lefty pitcher for said Penn, coming over from the Yanks if the Mets acquire him, who the Yanks also have interest in, as the Yanks have interest in a couple other relievers. But the one who I would have loved, along with potentially Matt Moore, who's still out there, again, a very capable, very effective southpaw, and any team's bullpen that has the luxury of acquiring him. Now we found out that another lefty, a guy that I would have liked, who had a Lon David Stearns connection that the Mets did show interest in, Brent Suter, signed around a $2.5 million deal over 1 year with the Reds, including some incentives in there, some bonuses. But for the people that are wondering why the Mets did not make that signing happen, one, thankfully, there's an abundance of some really, really good relievers in the market, where if the Mets land Brebbia, Peralta, Moore, Stanek, my goodness, there's so many others. David Robertson, Steven Robertson. Man, there's one more I'm blanking on from the Astros, and it isn't Hector Neris. Who is it? Phil Maton. Like, if they land any of these guys, I'll be very happy. So that's the one upside. The second thing that went in hand with why Suter most likely signed with Cincinnati is that he's a Cincy native, folks, and he just played with the Rockies this past season. So I'm going to go on a limb and say if a guy has an effective season pitching in one batter's box, that being in Colorado, he's also going to have a very effective season pitching another batter's box, and a very young, upside, and hungry Cincinnati Reds. And for him to kind of grow up a Reds fan, or at least have a connection there in some way, shape, or form, to be going back home, I'm sure all those things and then some were appealing to him to kind of take a hometown discount. Because otherwise, if he signed elsewhere, he's probably signing for at least $1.5 million, if not $2 million more, with other clubs, especially if he say came to Queens, for example. Worst offseason ever as a whole. Ever? No, far the same from the truth. That I disagree with that, especially when you look at the current roster the Mets have. Yes, it's not the sexiest by any stretch, but this team is far better than many teams we've seen the Mets roll out there in recent years. It's been an underwhelming offseason, I agree. If the Mets do not do anything of significance else, it would be a really, really bad looking offseason. But they're still going to add to the pen. There's potential that they're going to add a DH. They may still add the rotation, but we're kind of left stagnant here to find out the new news, when it's going to happen, what it's going to be. And until then, we're stuck talking about the international free agent signings that took place today, which isn't a bad thing. You know, we're also getting into that territory of getting into more prospect talk as we lead into spring training, which I'm certainly excited and look forward to doing. But we want to see this Mets team make more moves, because right now it is nothing short of underwhelming. I'm excited to see hopefully what they can come up with. So Mets fans, that is what I'll leave you with. Thank you so much for watching, listening. We're live on a replay. It really does mean a lot. What is your biggest takeaway from tonight's live show? Let me know. For people on replay, people that watch live, thank you so much for your donations, the endless generosity, the likes, the subscriptions. Help us get to 25,000 subscribers. We're just a couple hundred away. We're going to be doing a big giveaway on the channel once we hit that milestone. And stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Mets all offseason long. Thank you again, folks. And as always,